There is a voice you still hear. Not with your ears, you hear it in your head, at the moment you're about to make a decision. When you're looking at yourself in the mirror before going out. When you finish a job and still don't know if it's good. When someone criticizes you and you search for your first reaction before filtering. When you think about what you deserve or don't deserve. Origin has a face. The episode about the father existed in season 1. And many people saw themselves in it. In the hero who became a villain. In the adult-to-adult reunion. In the roles that reverse over time. It was one of the episodes that generated the most comments. But there was something left unsaid. Something many people felt, but didn't know how to name in the comments. It's that the relationship with the mother works completely differently, and deserves exactly the same rigor. The father's curve is a line that goes up, down, and up again. The mother's legacy is not a line. It's the environment in which everything else happens. You didn't fully understand. It doesn't have to be beautiful or dramatic. It has to be true. This is the episode that will benefit most from your personal presence. Research in developmental psychology is clear on this. The relationship with the maternal figure is the first relationship. Not just chronologically, structurally. It's the relationship that teaches what a relationship is. Before learning that the world has rules, there's a person who either responds or doesn't respond. Who is there or isn't there. Who recognizes or doesn't recognize. This pattern, consistency, availability, recognition, forms what psychologists call an attachment style. And the attachment style is perhaps the deepest invisible legacy that exists because it precedes language. John Bowlby, the British researcher who developed attachment theory, argued that the patterns formed in the relationship with the primary caregiver in the early years of life create internal working models. Expectations about how relationships work that operate beneath all adult life. You are not as you are in relationships by accident. You learned to be this way before you had words to describe what you were learning. This doesn't mean the mother is responsible for everything. It means she was the first school, and the first school always leaves a mark. The father's legacy is about identity and authority. The mother's legacy is about security and recognition. They are different legacies, with different consequences. There are 4 main patterns that emerge from the relationship with the maternal figure. They are not diagnoses, they are tendencies. And recognizing your own pattern is the first step to not being governed by it. Pattern 1, the secure base. A mother who was consistently present, who responded to emotional needs, who allowed the child to explore the world knowing there was a safe place to return to. What is learned here? The world is safe enough to be explored. Relationships are sources of comfort. Your worth doesn't depend on constant performance. People with this pattern generally find it easier to trust, to ask for help, to accept intimacy. They are not immune to relational problems, but they have a more solid base to navigate them. Pattern 2, transmitted anxiety. An anxious mother transmits anxiety, not for being a bad mother, for being human. The world she presented to the child was a place of potential threats, of things that can go wrong, of catastrophes always around the corner. She overprotected, which paradoxically taught the child that they are not capable of protecting themselves. People with this pattern tend to hypervigilance, difficulty tolerating uncertainty, an internal voice that always anticipates the worst. Not because they are anxious by nature, because they learned that anxiety is the appropriate response to life. Pattern 3, conditional validation. A mother whose love and approval depended on performance, on grades, on behavior, on being a certain way. What is learned here is that you are loved when you deserve it, that your worth depends on what you produce or display, that there is a version of you that is acceptable and a version that is not. People with this pattern often have a very active inner critic. They work hard, but rarely feel it's enough. They are good at receiving feedback on work, but very vulnerable to criticism about who they are. Self-esteem is fragile because it has always been conditional. Pattern 4. Absence in various forms. A mother who was physically present but emotionally absent, due to depression, work, or not having received what she needed to give. Or a mother who wasn't present at all. What is learned here is that emotional needs are inconvenient, that you can't depend on anyone, that it's safer not to need. People with this pattern tend to hyper-independence, a genuine difficulty in accepting help, in showing vulnerability, in allowing someone to get close enough for their departure to hurt. But in your concrete behavior today, this episode has a risk, and I will name it directly so it doesn't operate beneath the surface. When we talk about the mother's legacy, there is an immediate tendency towards two extremes, either to protect the mother from any critical analysis or to use her as an explanation for everything that went wrong. Neither is useful. Your mother is neither a saint nor a villain. She is a person who also received a legacy and did with it what she could, with the resources she had, in a context she didn't fully choose. This doesn't mean the impact of what was transmitted isn't real. It is completely real. But the aim of this episode is not to create blame. It's to create clarity. Because clarity is what allows you to choose differently. There is interesting research on what psychologists call earned security, security that is earned. People who grew up without a secure base, but who, through therapeutic work or corrective relationships in adulthood, developed the patterns they didn't receive. Legacy is not destiny when seen with enough clarity. Forgiving doesn't mean approving. It means choosing not to let someone else's past continue to decide your future. Mother evolved in adulthood? Is there something you realized about her, about who she was, about her limitations, about what shaped her, that changed how you see what you received? There is a pattern that research consistently documents. We tend to replicate what we received, not out of weakness, because it's the model we know. Anxious mothers tend to raise anxious children, not because they want to, because anxiety is their normal state, and it transmits in 1,000 small interactions that were never conscious. Mothers with conditional validation tend to raise children with fragile self-esteem because it's the model of love they have. But the cycle can be interrupted. And interrupting the cycle doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness. A mother who can say, I know I get anxious about this, and I don't want my anxiety to be your map of the world, is already doing something fundamentally different from what she received. Awareness doesn't guarantee change, but unconsciousness guarantees repetition. If you are a parent, or if you ever will be, this episode is not about your past. It's about the future you are building. What will you pass on, and with what awareness? Ability to see clearly what you received and choose what you will pass on. The mother is the first mirror, the first face you look for to see if you were okay, the first place where you learned if what you feel has value. And that mirror, perfect or imperfect, present or absent, consistent or unpredictable, stayed. Not just as a memory, as a structure, as the way your nervous system learned to expect the world to work. Seeing that structure doesn't undo anything, but it allows something that wasn't possible before, to consciously choose which parts of the structure you want to keep and which ones you are ready to examine. You didn't choose the first school, but now you know where you studied, and that changes everything. That is invisible legacy. What the mother left that no episode about the father can cover. Until now, we've talked about what you inherited in terms of how you see the world, how you earn and spend, who is the person who shaped you before any choice. But there is a legacy that no one wants to examine, because examining failures seems to admit you failed. Next time, we will go exactly to that place. Invisible Legacy, Season 2.